You're listening to Adoptees On, the podcast where adoptees discuss the adoption experience. I'm your host, Haley Radke, and this is a special episode in our Healing series where I interview therapists who are also adoptees themselves so they know from personal experience what it feels like to be an adoptee. Today, we are talking about estrangement. Let's listen in. I'm so pleased to welcome back to Adoptees On, Pam Cordano. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
One of our all-time favorite therapists. And I love bringing you on to talk about cheery subjects. You know, we talk about anger and all kinds of hard things. And today we're going to talk about estrangement. Hey, don't you love being that cheery person to come and tell us about estrangement?
Oh, gosh. It's a big topic.
It is a big topic. It is.
Complicated. No way to make it simple.
No, it's so true. It's so painful. And I'm joking about it, and I'll probably joke about it later and laugh about it because it's awkward. It's painful. We both have experiences with this, and so it's personal. There's lots of feelings, and we're just going to do our best. So
that's all we can do is do our best with a messy, complicated topic.
So I have heard from lots of adoptees that they are estranged. And today we're specifically focusing in on estrangement from our adoptive families. So can you talk a little bit about that? I know you're in the community. I know you've heard from tons of us, myself included. You've been on the other end of that phone call. So
yeah, it's a big topic. And I think that when adoptees come out of the fog and they start to become disillusioned with what's happened to them and what their own adoptions have cost them, as far as losing their lineage, losing their birth families, losing a country, the terms of the adoption, things they might not have been told, lies, cover-ups, whatever. And just to learn more about the adoption industry itself and corruption and things like that. I think that's a place where the relationship with their adoptive family can feel more unsolid and in danger than it's ever felt before. At least it can be very stressful, but for the relationship with their adoptive family. But often what I hear about is much more than the word stressful. It's feeling of disgust or betray. These are strong words. I don't know if I should even say them, but feelings of disgust with their adoptive families, or feeling betrayed by them, enraged with them, just really needing to embark on their own journey of finding out who their first family is, and possibly visiting a country that they might have been born in or been from that they've never been to before, or just really going out and embarking on this self-discovery journey to find the truth and to get grounded for the first time in a new way in who they really are and always have been at some level. And that can just really throw a lot of chaos into the relationship with their adoptive family. So that's a point. And then of course there's reunion, where they actually find we find our birth parents, and the stress and strain that can put into the relationship with our adoptive families. And it just seems like it can get very, very complicated and dangerous for the relationship.
Well, I've heard those things too. Those are big pain points for people. And yeah. The first one you expressed, so coming out of the fog, and we're learning to look at our adoption, like the real impact it's had on us, and looking at it from a point of grief and loss and trauma and all those things.
Anger,
yes. And then, I mean, just of course, imagine expressing that to the people that adopted you and thought they were doing the right thing, and probably had no idea of all these external factors. I mean, we're talking to adult adoptees here from a broad range of ages and, adoptions history. People would say things have improved. I don't know if I agree with that or not. But years and years ago, I mean, adoptive parents, we had no idea. Maybe adoptive parents today have maybe a little bit of a better idea of ethical issues in adoption. Maybe they don't. That's a debate for another day. But imagine expressing those feelings to the people who participated in this industry.
Right. And in some ways it can be easier to focus on the factual pieces. Like, so what made you want to do it this way? Or why didn't you ask these questions? Or, I mean, these sort of pieces of the story that we might talk with our adoptive parents about. But I think that the really hard thing is the underneath stuff that we don't even have language for, about what it has been like for us to lose our lineage and to not be with them, and to well, for most of us, all of us, have a profound feeling in like ourselves of being unwanted and there being something wrong with us, and trying to say that to people who did everything that they could to make us feel the opposite. And this rude awakening that's so deep in our own systems, that, and I'm sure in a way in the systems of our adoptive parents too, that, and how do we even navigate the feelings? Like when we come out of the fog and things start to get shaky, like how do we even navigate that with people who aren't adopted? I mean, who could possibly understand what it's like? And so that just puts this, even when everyone has the best of intentions, it just puts this barrier in place, I think, with trying to work this out with our this is not very, I'm going to say this, I'm probably not allowed to say like our quote parents, like, but our quote parents. And this is part of the estrangement, right? That there's a point where we can put quotes around parents, like, well, which parents? And suddenly what was just a given is now a question. Are these my parents? Are these my quote parents? Are these people that I can disentangle myself from? Do I have a real parent somewhere else? Am I going to get better care and love from them? Are they going to get it more than my adoptive parents do because they went through a loss with me? And wouldn't that be amazing if we could join there and my whole being could be understood and received, and I could finally settle down and feel and relax a bit and feel safe. That's like the wish, the dream. But how are we supposed to find that when everything's gone into upheaval?
Well, and then addressing that with the context of search and reunion, adding that layer, like from what I've seen, people wrote into me and said, well, actually, I searched and reunited, but my adoptive parents were so mad. They're the ones that cut off contact. And so I know that's not true for everyone, but those feelings are so big, I think, of that feeling of like, well, now I'm being really replaced by my, adopted child's first family.
Mm-hmm. Right. And for us, we're like, well, boo-hoo, our whole life has been this. Like, I mean, it's like, is this comparable pain? Like, for adoptees, it's often like, we feel like grow up and be parents and be steady for us. Don't be children, be parents, so we can finally get down to the truth of the pain we're in and find a way to try to start addressing it differently.
In your experience, do you think we are actually having these conversations with our adoptive parents and it's leading to a strain and perhaps eventually to estrangement? Or are these things the unsaid things that lead us to the path of estrangement? Because I tell you, I have had many conversations about this. And when people sometimes, like, I'm like, well, what was the breaking point? Like, what was the thing? Like, what was the last thing? Like, a few people have been like, oh, well, we had this big fight about such and such, but really, it was all this buildup. Or some people will just be like, well, there was no big fight. I just, like, that was it for me. It just gradually, like, I don't know. Think about what are your thoughts on that?
I think the same for me. I hear about big conflicts where finally there's a point in time where the heat comes out about everybody's upset about this or that, or you never and you always, and it finally, like, the stress and strain really just comes out and shows itself in a way that feels irreparable. But normally I think that there's just so much that isn't said, or that's said in a twisted up kind of way or in a partial kind of way. It's not like things are just, and in a way that's how adoptees often grow up, is not really saying the whole truth. And we're trying to stay safe and be loved and be, even the adoptees I know who were the quote angry adoptees like I was and were rebellious and troublemakers, we were also still making sure we had a place to sleep and food on the table. Like, maybe some of us get sent away to whatever boarding school or something, but I didn't. But I guess what I'm trying to say is so much is unsaid in the adoptee in almost all cases that I know of, that when things get so stressed and strained, whether it's because of reunion or whether it's because of some other event, like who knows, it could be anything, that often there isn't a practice inside of us adoptees or in our families of talking through things in a really thorough, grounded kind of way. So the explosions are much more like partial communications about things that are really important but really charged, and it just totally messy.
So I asked on Instagram a few weeks ago when I started releasing episodes about the Estrangement series, I asked listeners if they had ever considered estrangement from their adoptive parents. And some of the answers were really heartbreaking to me and fascinating, and I think we can learn a lot from them. One person said, "I've seriously considered it, but I can't do it. Must be grateful, face palm emoji."
Mm-hmm.
Seriously considered it. So what would make people seriously consider it? We've talked about these relationship dynamics that are very hard and very painful, especially when, I don't know, I think we're finally exposing our true identity, I think.
What I hear from adoptees is that adoption feels like too much you, not enough me. Like the fact of being, like the experience of being adopted itself, it's too much you and not enough me in the relationship. And even when adoptees are rebellious and angry, they're still organizing to this you. Their life is like about rebelling from this you, or when they're being compliant and grateful, they're very attentive to the you. And so when we grow up and we start getting healthier, or the cost of being you-centered starts to weigh on us in different ways. We get sick, or we have other kinds of problems that show up from being too you-centered in our lives. Then pretty much we either get worse or we start to heal because there's a crisis there with however it's showing up. And so when people get a little healthier and they get more filled in with, well, what's me? What do I need? Like there's an I in here that needs to feel seen and understood and respected and loved and cared for. That's often when we try to bring more of our own true selves into the relationship with our adoptive parents. And if it doesn't go well in various ways, that's where we can feel like, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is toxic for me. These people are toxic for me. Like I can't be comfortable in my skin when I'm around these people. And that's what I hear about a lot from adoptees, with how they feel with their when they start to bring more of themselves, their true self, the range of their true selves into the relationship, and where it's not received, or the parents feel threatened, or they're judging them in some way and not getting what's trying to be expressed. And then the adoptee can just feel like, I'm better off without this. Although that's just part of the picture, because then there's a tremendous cost for us also. I mean, this is opening to another subject another related subject, but even when we leave painful or unhealthy relationships, it's especially with family members, it costs us a lot as adoptees. Like the leaving, the breaking, the ending it's got its own whole host of problems that come from just that, reliving that experience of a broken relationship. The cost of that is tremendous on us.
Well, estrangement can seem from the outside maybe like an easy, quick fix. Like, I'm in quotation marks, right? Fine, that's it. I'm just ending it. Yeah. But there's an intense cost, is what you're saying.
Totally. And that often it comes after the adrenaline and the mobilization of like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm just drawing the line. And you know what? Calling your friends, I drew the line. I'm done. I'm out. Yay, you. Good for you. I'm changing my name. Good for you. And by the way, I'm a fan of changing the name right now. I'm all about that. I'm very excited about that. But I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying that there can be this mobilization of energy to like save ourselves, from this toxic situation where we don't exist enough in the relationship. But then that gets followed by a cost because, and that's not a reason not to do it. It's just to try to be thorough about the whole picture. That I think that it takes a big toll on us. I mean, how could it not? Like, we have the most profound experience of a broken set of relationships you could possibly have as a human being, to lose your lineage, to get separated away, cut off from your lineage. So every cutoff from that point on, whether we're in first grade and we break up with a friendship, or romantic breakups or whatever, they take a lot out of us adoptees, because we have that breaks reverberate back to the beginning. And it's just like with grief, like when non-adoptees they lose somebody, every grief after that brings back the first grief. That's just how we are as humans. They all link together.
So I'm going to read another note that I got from an adoptee about this. And this is going to feel really strong. This is strong language. This is what people are really thinking on the inside and probably wouldn't say out loud. Okay. I wish I could leave them behind and never look back. I feel obligation only. I'm biding my time until they die, and that makes me feel overwhelming guilt. But I might be able to live my own life when they pass away.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that from so many adoptees. And I mean, this is so taboo. We're not supposed to say these things.
Can I tell you, reading that out loud made me feel guilty. I'm tearing up. I know adoptive parents listen to this podcast, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about guilt, like what you're saying now and what that person said in what you read, what's hard is the adoptees who I hear say that are good people. They're good people. And they're just trying to find a way to be able to breathe in their skin and in their life. They're trying to find a way they can feel like they are more comfortable in their life and in their skin. And so what they're longing, it's like two things are in conflict. Like one thing is just, I need to feel comfortable in my skin. I need to feel like I belong somehow to the life I'm living in a way that is not so compromised that it's just choking me and suffocating me. But the point isn't to be mean to the adoptive parents and to like kill them off or to like not even care when they die. That's not the point. The point is the existence as an adoptee with so much being underground and misunderstood or ununderstood. It's the pain of that is so hard that to imagine a time when we don't have to suck ourselves into ourselves so tight that we're not even really there to interact with people. We're just longing for that relief. So it's these two things that, we feel guilty for what we're saying, but we also know that there's like a liberation that comes from I hate talking about this publicly. I have, and I will, and I hate it just because of what you just said about how you felt reading that statement. And, but I had such relief when my adoptive parents died. It was 8 years ago that they both died close together. I'm an only child. And I felt like the charade is over. I am now free. I don't have any adoptive parents. I'm not an I could say in a way, I'm not an adoptee. I'm a person. I mean, I still am because it still affected me and it's informed my life in every way, but I was free of it. And I had this feeling as if I'd been swimming across this giant ocean for 50 years or 40 something years. And finally I got to shore. That's how I felt when they died, because finally I felt like a real person, like the real me. Like I was a person that wasn't eclipsed by this adoption thing that I didn't even choose for myself or want. It was liberating. But that's more about me and my own internal suffering than, oh, my adoptive mom was so bad. My adoptive dad was so bad. It just less them. And so the problem is if we say something like this in a mixed crowd, we can look like we're just hating on our adoptive parents. And maybe we kind of are, but I really think that the point is we need to feel comfortable inside. And sometimes it requires a full being away from through death or through estrangement to find like, oh, this is just me here. And this is what it feels like to be just me. Like I can breathe for a second, like, wow. And then we can learn from that freedom.
Well, I appreciate what you said just there, because I think now I'm seeing this more of a bigger spectrum of estrangement. It's like there's some people that choose it just so they can be themselves. And there's people that choose it because of obvious, abusive, horrible behavior. And then in the middle, there's the people, I don't think I've released this interview yet, but someone expressed to me that it's like his adoptive parents were like really good people and really good about certain things. And then they were also like really horrible about certain things, like the both. And so it's okay to see them as both. And it just wasn't safe to be in relationship with them anymore. So this is a huge spectrum.
Yeah. My adoptive parents were not bad people. You know, they were, if I had been their biological child, I'm sure it would have been fine. But to not be their biological child, and then with all of all the complexity, my trauma, their unawareness, it was a kind of a disaster inside of me.
Can you talk about, let's go towards the middle of that spectrum, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, your parents are, good people, pretty fine, whatever. But there's things that they do that are just kind of like, eating away, I would say. So boundary crossing, things that, looking back on it, you're like, oh, that's not great. Like there's some things that are kind of just eating away at you. How does somebody come to the point where they're like, you know what, I'm kind of done with this? Like, how do you come to that point? Like, I think I've said this a couple times in this series too. Like, I don't want to just like advise everybody that they break up with their families. Like, I'm not advocating for that either. Like, I just want adoptees to feel like they're free to be themselves and they feel like they're in healthy relationships. Like, is that so much to ask?
Right. You and I want ourselves and all the adoptees to feel like we have a say, that we have power in our choices in our lives, and that we're people first and we're adoptees second, meaning our duties. If we perceive we have duties as adoptees, those are second, or those are maybe 3,000, in the list, that we ultimately are people. We are humans, and we get to make choices that like everybody else does. We're not servants. We're not second class citizens. We may feel that way, but we're not. So what is it? How far do we have to go? What does it take to free ourselves of feeling that other people are more important than we are? And I think that the pattern that tends to explode an adoptive family into estrangement has something to do with, well, from the adoptees I know, of them feeling like they just cannot make enough space for themselves, their authentic selves in the relationship somehow. Their needs, the depth of their feelings, their pain, the things they haven't liked, anger, all those things, that if it's hard to make room for that in adoptive families, that's where there's jeopardy there.
So another adoptee shared, I chose estrangement because they would not respect my boundaries. And I wonder if that's sort of expressing what you just said there.
Yeah, because when we don't respect someone's boundaries, we're saying that my needs are more important than your needs. I'm more important than you. That's what we're saying. So it's healthy then to say that this is not working for me. So either we change something, or I got to step back even further. And then we have another chance to change something. I got to step back even further. Maybe to no contact, if it comes to that. If it seems too impossible, if it proves to be too impossible to be heard and respected.
How do I know when it comes to that point? How do I know, like, to choose me? Because so we're not familiar with choosing me first. Like,
right. Exactly. It can really help to have a therapist involved in getting to that point of trying to discern, like, how much distance do I need? Is this relationship threatening? Might I need to get out of this entirely? Or am I not communicating as clearly as I could be? Or am I not honoring my own boundaries as well as I could be? Or am I not speaking my own needs as clearly as I could be? Like, how much of it is that we haven't built those skills because maybe our families weren't a place we were building those skills, or we weren't people who were building those skills for whatever reasons? And how much of that is that, no, this is an unworkable situation here. I'm not gonna, it's impossible for me with these people to be respected or understood or seen or cared for the way I need to be. And it's too painful. It's like, there's that expression with alcoholism. Like, when do people stop drinking? It's when the worst day sober is better than the best day drinking. Like, there's some way that the scale tilts, that there's a tipping of the scale. So it's like, okay, this is like using coffee for this math equation, but the best day being in relationship is worse than the worst day of being out of relationship. That's when it's like the scale has tipped, and it's like, it's not, and then an adoptee is just going to be like, I cannot handle this anymore. I need out. Forget it. Done. When I was in grad school for psychology, I had this really amazing family therapy professor, and I just idealized him. And I thought, if anybody could help me and my adoptive parents, it's him. And I convinced them to go with me to a family session. And we got in the room, and my adoptive dad told this guy that the trouble in our relationship wasn't 100% my fault, because I had been as a baby, I had rejected him. And the therapist spent 3 sessions trying to get through to my dad, just even a baby step, and it went nowhere. And the therapist fired us. And then that was when I knew I had to fire my parents. So I fired them for 2 years. I was like 100% out for 2 years. And then I had to change. I had to get grounded in, wow, like, that's him. It's not going to change. That's the best he could give. And that, with all that help, that's the best he could give. Whoa, this is my life. This is real, right? I got to get grounded there and cultivate some other ways of feeling connected in the world. And then, then 2 years later, I decided to go back in. I was picturing myself having a whole, I don't know, I was picturing like a snorkeling suit, but go back in, or helmet, go back in.
Okay, I want to put a pin in that, because we are going to talk about that next time.
Okay.
As we wrap this part 1 up, I'm just sensing this, we've talked about this overwhelming guilt. Oh my gosh, can we do this? Can we do this? And I feel like, I hope you can speak to this. I feel like if we are on purpose choosing and thinking through this, like we've kind of expressed over our time together today, and we're really choosing it with an intent and purpose of taking care of ourselves, can we alleviate some of that guilt? Because it's like, okay, I am putting myself first, and because you've expressed this a couple times, like, well, okay, that's it, right? And maybe for some of us, the decision is like in a split second, like, that's the last straw. But I don't think it's that way for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that as we kind of wrap up this part 1?
It's a really good question, Haley. And even with the adoptees I work with, who are the most confident about their decision, the most confident and grounded in their decision to leave permanently their relationship with their adoptive families, that guilt does still linger, and they might get a call from a extended family. Oh, your mother's in the hospital. She would really this, or she would really that. There's still that cord, connecting to this sense of it's complicated, and it's not, I don't think, just a sense of that adoptee obligation, like, we were saved, so we have to then be grateful and devoted to the people who saved us, that narrative. But also, there was some bonding. I mean, we were babies, and we were fed and cared for enough that we stayed alive. I mean, there was enough of, I talk in my book about call and response. Like, we called, they responded enough that we're still here. And so that in and of itself is a kind of bonding. We may say, oh, no, I'm not bonded, but no, that there is a kind of bonding that happens when we're so young and little and we're asking for care. And even if our parents have mental health issues or are not good for us to be in a relationship with, there's still enough that happened that we're alive. So it's like in us in some way that's hard. It's really hard to feel clean, to feel free and clean, really, So even the clearest people are still struggling with that.
Okay. Well, I had a big sigh because I was hoping you would just give us a nice, tidy answer, but fine.
Well, no, wait, I do have a tiny answer. I do have it's a hard answer though. And I don't know if it's going to make sense, but I do have a tiny answer, which is if we do make that decision in a careful way over time, and we feel like it's the right decision, and we still have those feelings of guilt, what we tend to want to do is change the channel really fast, or like drop the guilt like a hot potato, because it's so painful to feel that kind of guilt. But what we actually need to do is to lean into it, because that guilt holds a lot of information for us about who we are, that we're loving people, we're caring people, we care, even though we are making a decision to separate. We care, we have hearts, like we're loving people. And also that there may be a pattern that's been in place forever about being so over responsible for the other person, for the you, that pattern dominated us for so long. And the guilt in a way is also part of that too. Like it's so hard for me to put down the worry about you, to put down the anxiety I feel about what you're feeling about my decision, because I'm so you focused. And the way to become not you focused in part is to get aware by leaning into it, of how much that's dominated us and how yucky it feels. It's like going through the fire rather than trying to avoid the fire. Does that make sense? Like what I'm saying? Do you get me?
Well, it makes sense, but I'm a little bit irritated with you, not going to lie, because putting feelings away is a little bit nicer feeling than leaning in to learning what the deeper feelings mean.
I know. You know what? I was an expert at putting feelings away and thinking I could get away with it. And well, I don't believe that anymore. I don't, like with my most beloved clients, I'm really working hard with them to lean into those hard places, not to be trapped there and imprisoned there, but to get free that way. Like to me, it's like the quickest way out of it, rather than unnecessary torture.
Okay, well, I guess I appreciate the challenge you're giving. I'll get to a place of appreciating the challenge. Thank you for your wisdom on this. It's not easy to hear. I'll tell you the truth. It's not easy to hear.
Did you ever hear the phrase, what you resist persists?
Oh, jeez. Yes. I'm just going to double down like that. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
How does it feel to be the bearer of bad news all the time, Pam?
Very familiar. Very familiar.
Oh my gosh. Well, if we want to hear more wisdom from you and maybe some hard things that we need to hear.
It'll be a year before I'm on here again. Sorry.
No. We'll hear from you next week and then we'll see. Where can we connect with you online? And please also tell us about your fabulous book. If I had more than 2 thumbs, I would however many stars, book as well.
You can find me. My website is pamcordano.com. You can email me at pcordano@comcast.net. Yeah, I published my book a little over a year and a month ago, and that's been fun. Yeah, so that's how you can connect with me.
And what's your book called? Tell us your book.
Oh, it's called 10 Foundations for a Meaningful Life, No Matter What's Happened. And it's a lot about being adopted and trying to find ways of healing, but it's not just about adoption, but adoption is in there from page 1.
It's fantastic. And we got to do a book club with you over on the Adoptees On Patreon, which also top notch. So, but that's behind a paywall. This is free. That's behind a paywall. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, even if I give you a hard time.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I am so thankful for all of the therapists who have been willing to share their time with us on the show and their wisdom and expertise. I just think it's a real huge gift to the adoptee community. And I'm excited that I can provide these episodes to you. You can listen again and again. And, there's a whole library of podcasts. I mean, this is episode, 172. So there's hours and hours of healing series episodes that I hope will help you feel supported in some way. I know therapy is just not accessible for everyone. And so this is just a part of the way that I hope to provide resources to the community that is accessible in as much as a podcast could be. Even that I know is a stretch. I was just talking to someone the other day about this, and it's like it's a free resource, and yet not everybody has access to the internet or some digital device to listen on. So I understand that even that has limitations. I digress. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. There are this collective of 200 people that support the show monthly. And that pays for so many of the behind the scenes costs of running the show and producing this resource for you. And so I'm so thankful for you guys. You know who you are. I try not to name names because some people really want to keep their privacy. And I've had quite a few of them on the podcast, and that's been really special to hear more of their stories in depth. So if you want to keep Adoptees On going and growing and reaching more adoptees around the world, I would encourage you to go to adopteeson.com/partner. You can find out more details. There are some fun behind the scenes things that you can have access to, like a weekly podcast where me and a co-host talk about adoption and lots of other personal things that I probably wouldn't share on the show. That's available to every single Patreon supporter. And then there's different levels. There's a private Facebook group. There's other little things here and there that you can have access to. So including our book club, that's available to every Patreon supporter. The audio recording is up for our last 2 episodes already, and they were really fantastic and insightful. So I try really, really hard to make the main feed show awesome, and also for the Patreon stuff. So you can support the show out of your generous heart and also get some rewards. So it's like both hand. Anyway, I couldn't make the show without you. Thank you so much for showing up for me in that way. And I will continue to show up for you. Next week, we will have part 2 with Pam Cordano on estrangement. Thank you for listening. Let's talk again next Friday.